Hi guys, welcome to another video. Today we have something a little different. This is a control board from a StarTrac Exercise Bike. I'll put the model number up on the screen. Customer says that he hasn't used the bike for a while, and then when he went to go and use it, everything powered on, the display came on, but there was no feedback when the pedals were rotated. He was getting no feedback of the RPM or etc. See, I don't know exactly. This is the first time I've worked on one of these. It was one thing which I have noticed by eye, visually you can't quite see it. Maybe you can, but there appears to be some corrosion on certain spots of the board. What I'll do is I will pop this under the microscope and give you a clearer view. There's like a clear conformal coating across all of the components except in certain parts, and that just happens to coincide where the corrosion is. So it looks like in the factory most of the board was like painted with this layer of protection, which has done a great job everywhere else. And where they've missed the coating, that's exactly where the corrosion is. So let's go under the microscope and I'll show you exactly what the corrosion looks like. We're going to have to disassemble the board. It's on like a aluminum heat sink, so we'll have to remove the mounting bolts from the transistors just to get the board off, so we can try and clean up the corrosion properly, make sure we get all of it. There is an area of concern here. There's an SMD resistor which is quite badly corroded. I'm not sure if the pad is going to be okay, but once we get under the microscope we can have a better look. I'm hoping that with some flux and heat, just go over these connections, that we can get rid of that corrosion and hopefully get the item going. So let's go under the microscope and see what's happening. Okay, so here under the microscope, this is the area that has been hit by corrosion. It looks pretty nasty. That's the resistor that I mentioned. You can see how bad that corrosion is. And you can see the shiny part of on the board. That is where they have the protective layer. And exactly where they've missed, that's where the corrosion is. This is really bad. It's a capacitor. Again there. You can see. Let me get a finer pointed. This one you'll be able to see better. You can see this is the protective layer, and this is where there's nothing. It ends there and comes around back this way. You can see how protective layer, not protected. So some down there on that transistor. So I have a feeling, I'm pretty confident that this is what the issue is, but we have to get in there and wow, that's pretty dusty. Try and clean it up properly, and then because this comes from an exercise bike, obviously the customer couldn't bring the whole bike to me. It would have been a bit of an issue. So I'll clean this up and then give the board back to the customer, let him pop it back in the bike, and we'll get some feedback from him to see whether it's working or not. And yeah, so let's start by taking the board off the heatsink and trying to clean up that. Obviously I'm not touching the bottom yet until I check that capacitor. So the capacitor is this guy here. Let's test him for voltage. That'll be DC. So this also has the clear coat on it. So I'm gonna dig down. Okay, there's no voltage. Anyway, what I wanted to check is if there's any corrosion on the bottom of the board, which there doesn't appear to be. So the bottom of the board seems to be protected quite well with this clear coat. Let's see if I can get a closer view. You can see with the shininess there. So this is the clear coat protection. This is where on the other side of the board the corrosion is. It looks okay. So apparently this unit, you can see here the board is marked alternator. Apparently this unit has, when you pedal, there's a generator on the flywheel which supplies voltage, so you don't actually need an external power source to activate the display. There is an external connector which you can plug in. I have this here looks like it controls the main power, etc. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over this with some flux and solder. Just see. We'll measure these components as well. This capacitor is going to be challenging, I think. Can't quite see if there's a sometimes with corrosion it looks worse than it is. You give it a clean up, and like especially if it's like bright green like this. This one here where it had gone brown I think is a bit of an issue. I don't know whether that pad has been eaten away. Some there, some onto there on that leg. So that capacitor. So the traces are on the other side. See, I can't quite see where this trace goes, so let me throw some isopropyl on there just to clean it up a little more. I have an idea, well I know exactly where all the corrosion is. Okay, so we're going to get started and just go over all these connections with some flux and some solder. Just rework them and see what they look like afterwards. We'll do one section at a time. I'm going to be able to get in here. if working under the microscope is going to be a good idea. Should I get that diode? A lot of corrosion there. Oh, there's not much space to work. Flux and boil. Focus. Doesn't break it. A lot of on the fence. That's not the problem, it's just taking as well. Cool. That's something here. So condition, condition. That doesn't break. It's like this idea. Okay, so we're back. What I did is I went over all these connections with some flux and a soldering iron. Some of them turned out better than others. That one's okay. This one wasn't too bad. This one struggled. I tried to scrape and scrape it with the soldering iron. I think that's a better connection. It's measuring okay. This is the capacitor lead that was really bad. That's looking a lot better. I've measured the path between those two, that's fine. I measured this resistor, it's fine, 680 ohms. This was the one guy that was quite corroded on the end. I went over them. This guy had some corrosion. Where am I? This guy here. So yeah, at this point, without spending too much time just going over the board and measuring things randomly, I think what I'm going to do is give it back to the client and let him put it back in the bike and see if there's any improvement. It's quite difficult working on these things when you can't test them right away if you don't have the entire unit. But yeah, I'll give it back to the customer, see what he comes back with. If it's working, then great. I'll maybe ask him to take a small clip of the bike working and put it at the end of this video. Otherwise, you will see me again trying to troubleshoot this. In the beginning, like I showed you, is mainly just corrosion in this area. I think that is probably the thing, unless there's something else major on here. But yeah, I will see you at the end. Okay, so we are back working on this control board for the StarTrac Exercise Bike. In the last video we went over how there was a lot of corrosion in this area. I thought maybe that was the problem. I sorted that out, gave it back to the customer, and he tried it and it was still not working. So I've done quite a lot of troubleshooting off camera. The transistors are measuring okay. However, on this one here, we have voltage on the, what is that, the collector, and although the voltage is coming in on the collector, on the input, there's nothing coming out, and that's because this is not being told to turn on. I'll trace that back to this little guy over here. That kind of focus. So this little guy supplies voltage which turns this on, and then hopefully will turn the rest of the AC circuit on. So I've ordered a new chip. I couldn't get an exact replacement. The one I got I think should work fine. Hasn't arrived yet. But right now we're just going to try and get this guy off. The issue is that we have these two capacitors very close by. So I don't really want to take this big guy off. It's stuck down with this silicone glue. So what I've done is I've put some Kapton tape on the sides of these caps. This is heat resistant tape. So when I heat up with the hot air, I'll do it very quickly and pop that guy off. We'll go slow and see if I notice any burning or melting going on the cap here, I'll stop. But yeah, let's get that guy off, and then we'll wait for the new part. Nice, the Kapton tape did its job. Pretty clean pull. We'll clean that up with a soldering iron. Okay, so we're back on this controller board for the exercise bike. I received the new part. So we're just going to solder it on here, and then hopefully that'll be the only issue. Let's get the hot air going. I'm going to go that's with the line as well, because I don't have too much to put this capacitor in place. So I'll set this with the soldering line. We might get rework trying to do those on the side. So the lights. So we might get switch off. Let's set this. Let's. So swings around to the other side. So we can get the top ready now. Good. Clean up. Okay. Just leave that in there. Oh, it's on the handles. Outside. That's it. Don't go too much. Okay, so I put the chip back on, and unfortunately I'm still not getting this enable voltage, or the output voltage from this chip. The problem is that without a schematic, I don't know what the input voltage is, because it takes voltage from the AC generator. What I've done is I've wired in my DC power supply on the other side of the rectifier, and I'm only able to push in about 30 volts DC. But when the pedals are turning, and it's turning the AC generator, it can push up to 150 volts into here. So I don't know whether I'm just not having enough supply voltage. Still not getting any output on this this transistor. It'd be nice if we could get schematics for these things. So I think what I'll do is I will try and connect it back to the bike and just see if there's any change with the new chip using the voltage from the alternator on the bike. So unfortunately you can't win them all, so I'm going to have to call it quits on this, give it back to the client. I've spent way too long trying to troubleshoot this. Unfortunately, without the schematics and a good working knowledge of these boards, it's very hard to troubleshoot them. So thanks for watching, like and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next one. Ciao.